Welcome to Game Theory, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment. I'm streaming on Twitch and cosplaying as Melina from Mortal Kombat. This is going to be so much fun.
Wait, Twitch police here. You're dressed up as who?
Melina from Mortal Kombat. I'm going to be playing the game.
You realize that's way too of a revealing outfit, right? You can't be dressed as Melina.
So wait, I can play the game on Twitch, but I can't cosplay as the character?
I'm just saying you're using your body to get extra Twitch viewers. This is terrible. You can't do this. You're bad. Revealing your body on stream is bad. Melina's cool. Don't you dare suggest that we care about the fictional character more than a real woman. Even if that's technically the case. Actually the case. And written down in our rules.
Well, that's awful. Guess I won't be streaming on Twitch.
It's almost like that was the whole point. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
And today we are talking about censorship.
Yay! I imagine like a magical rainbow going behind the word censorship. The more you know.
Okay, then. Obviously, this is going to be an explicit episode because we're going to be talking about very mature subjects, specifically regarding promiscuity and sex. Mm-hmm. I guess take us away, Kira.
All right. So, to talk about censorship in general in media, let's just say that America has a very weird sense of what's okay for younger people to see and what's not okay.
Oh, yes, because different types of censorship are weighted very differently. Some essentially not at all.
Yeah, like, violence is not nearly as strictly monitored as any type of sex in media. And the ratings show that. Because, like, there are so many things that'll bring you up to a rating that's exclusively to do with sex, but you can have as much violence as you want within certain parameters.
And that's very American. But
yes, absolutely. I definitely hear about other countries who, like, are okay with nudity and stuff in their media.
I have a story about that, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast once, Daily Zeitgeist, and they had a guy that was talking about how, like, oh, right, you're American. The story goes like this. He was over in Sweden with a friend of his, and his friend had a child. They went to go to the movies in Sweden with his friend and his friend's child, right? Mm. And in the movie that they were watching, which was, I don't know the exact rating system over there, but it was enough for a child to be allowed in, right?
Yeah.
In the movie, a person just gets naked and you can see a man's genitals.
Oh, wow.
And so the American guy telling the story was horrified at first, being like, what? And his Swedish friend goes, oh, you're American. We don't consider that explicit over here. Like, if there were guns, then maybe they wouldn't have let the kid in. Or maybe not guns. If there was, like, gory violence, they wouldn't have let the kid in, right?
Yeah.
But this is just a body part.
Oh, wow.
And so it's very different over here in America, and I'm sure different countries have different takes on this, but considering America's dominance in the world, I'm sure there's a fair number of countries that mirror America. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like all of this traces back to America's roots and Puritan exiles.
Oh my God, you're right. That's horrifying. And absolutely horrifying. And if you're right.
If you're ever wondering why America is just so prudish and ridiculous when it comes to the subject of sex and why they censor it more than anything else, it's because this country was founded by religious extremists that were so extreme that Britain didn't want them.
Oh my god, you're completely right. That's wow.
Yep.
That's literally how it started.
People talk about how like America was kind of like a penal colony. They would send the people they didn't want, indentured servants, slaves. There was literally an industry of people kidnapping people off the street and just sending them to America.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at a more worldly perspective, Australia was much more the kind of penal colony, where like literally they would send their criminals to Australia. Obviously, none of these things are 100% true. It was always a mixed bag, right?
Yeah.
But I think America, by far, got the largest share, less of criminals and more of religious people that didn't see eye to eye with the British way of practicing religion. They thought the British people were too relaxed on it.
Oh my god. That's so extreme. Because, like, if you think Britain was too lax, oh my.
Oh, and hey, there's literally a book about the Puritans that is required reading in most American schools.
Oh, yeah?
The Scarlet Letter.
Oh my god, you're right.
Those were Puritans.
Yeah.
Now, the book is, relatively critical of them. And that's good. But it kind of comes off in a way that's like, well, good thing we don't do that now. Mm-hmm. And yet we do.
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess it would be fair to say different, not as extreme.
Well, look, not as extreme. Just literally in a different way. Sure, we don't require a woman to wear a scarlet A on her clothes, but we shame her, mock her, consume her content without paying her, and then say that she's a criminal.
I mean, yeah, I think basically we've just had centuries of women fighting for rights in the law, and eventually America figured out like, oh, okay, we can give you those. Doesn't mean we have to honor them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are. Turns out, like, our entire society nowadays is based around the idea of tyranny with a smile.
Yeah.
It's based around how, like, yeah, you have rights. These rights. And look, they're less than what you wanted. Mm-hmm. Let's specify a contract that you have to obey and we don't. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got into the history a bit. I hope that wasn't too much of a tangent for you, Kira.
No, it's fine. I definitely want to discuss that.
But yeah, so like Puritans have always cared much more about sex than violence because the entire time they were shunning sex, they were committing genocides on the native people. Mm-hmm. And that has stuck with us today. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about how like America's relationship is with guns. Mm-hmm. It's very different from most of the others, has a bit of like individualism to it. And I don't know, I feel like that's a little tangential to our discussion. We're really... Because
a lot of the ratings aren't specifically decided on guns. Some video game ratings are, but not in movies.
And even if they are affected, I think it's pretty much universal that a character can have a gun, as if they don't actually shoot anyone with it or cause any blood to happen, it's considered not as violent. Mm-hmm. It's just the presence of a gun, I guess, does up the ante in some respect, which I guess I understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there's also this weird thing that's, I don't know, maybe it's not so weird, but the type of gun actually affects the maturity level. If it's a bullet-based gun, that's the most mature type of gun you can have. But if it's a grenade launcher or a rocket launcher, as in, weapons that are much more deadly and destructive, those are actually considered more child-friendly. I
think it's because it's explosions. So as long as you can show an explosion and no gore or actual body parts or anything like that, which you can do in those instances.
Okay, but let's be realistic. If you really had an explosion that actually had a target, just like if you shoot someone and it has a target, there's going to be blood in that explosion.
Yes, but you can ignore that and just focus on the fiery explosion and cover it up.
So when we get down to it, the only reason explosions are allowed is because, ooh, pretty colors.
Yes, and because it kind of covers up the actual death happening.
Only when you exaggerate the pretty colors beyond realism.
Yes, true.
America is messed up. There's a reason Solid Snake was in Super Smash Bros. And there was a reason he forgot to bring his guns, but he brought his grenade launcher.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
They can definitely make a launcher more cartoony than a gun, and that's why.
Exactly. It's I guess it's more difficult to have a gun be cartoony. Although I guess you could try it, but maybe just no one buys it.
Well, you could make a gun cartoony simply by not having it shoot bullets, having it shoot lasers or whatever instead.
True, very true.
Yeah.
But then you're changing the ammunition entirely.
Well, yeah, but I think a lot of content does that specifically to keep their rating low.
Exactly, yeah.
That's why, like, sci-fi stuff or whatever is...
I don't know. It's a little weird to me.
It is definitely weird and definitely not something we should be basing our ratings on, like...
I don't know. Guns are always so complicated to discuss.
But violence in general should definitely be rated differently than it is now. And so should sex.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to... I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
All right, do you want to actually bring up some examples?
Okay, I'm just going to say this.
Okay.
I understand the necessity for a rating system of some kind, right? Mm-hmm. Because I do think there are certain mature subjects that would be wise to be careful with around children. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what that is. Mm-hmm. So I think at the very least, whatever we try should be consistent.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
That's fair.
And it is not consistent.
Yeah, that is absolutely fair. All right. Do you want to talk about specific examples now?
Oh, by the way, I do want to point out though, once you're an adult, it should be like literally anything goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not the way it's treated.
Yeah, there's a rating beyond mature AO that isn't allowed to be shown in public.
Well, that's with games. I'm not even talking about explicit ratings, but like how explicit stuff in sex is still censored from adult audiences on like social media, YouTube and stuff.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's definitely true.
Like if I'm an adult, I should be able to find hardcore pornography on YouTube. I mean,
I would make the argument that you can.
Okay, but they try everything they can to remove it. They just fail.
Yes, but those websites would give the excuse that, well, we can't cater to that because if you're not an adult, then you should be able to go on our website and not see that.
Didn't YouTube just have a problem a few months ago that was big in the news about how there was like extremely creepy, like fetish, child-directed pornographic leaning cartoon content pervading their website, getting millions and millions of views, and it's the entire reason they had to roll out the new like child restriction age software for the YouTube platform?
I think that had to do with the legality of advertising to kids. I literally have never heard of...
Well, that is wrapped into it. But no, like literally there were like these like shell corporations that had algorithms just like putting like Elsa and Spider-Man, pregnancy, weird touching, just like, and then like generating content and then showing it to kids and putting like on autoplay and stuff. So the algorithm would feed these videos to kids and kids, kids don't know better. They're just watching whatever's next in the playlist. These videos racked up millions of views. There were entire industries and companies dedicated to this stuff.
That is so messed up and weird. I never heard about those specific kinds of videos.
And you know, they come in different flavors. One of them was literally this guy that was like everything but a literal pedophile, acting in all the ways you would think of a pedophile would do. And like the weird things they would make their kids do and dress up.
Wow.
YouTube had a big problem with this. They lost advertisers. They had to change the way they did so like now to fix it, they have a rule that says if your content is directly targeting kids, like those videos, you can't have advertisers. We're not going to sort through it. We're just going to prevent you from having advertisers and making money on video directly targeting kids.
Wow.
That's why they rolled out that new system.
Well,
so the
the
entire argument that they have to be family friendly is a farce because they failed at that anyway.
Yes, that's definitely true. And I would say specifically because, like, I believe what it was is that European laws made it were that you can't advertise to children.
Well, yeah, it was.
Like
I think
that.
it was the European Union pushing them to do this as well.
Yeah, and that's
America
why
didn't care.
Yeah, and that's why they eventually had to do it, was because they had laws preventing you from advertising directly to children. But yeah, that is so messed up. And you're right, they do very much suck at doing that, which is honestly a problem with all platforms and with platforms in general, is that they use these algorithms instead of having people go through stuff and actually have some common sense.
And with the amount of money you have, it would be easy for you to sort through content that way. I mean, you could find a way. I mean, I do think there's an element of discussion to be had where we say, like, if you've ever wondered how YouTube's algorithm works, if you've ever wondered why they're so shady about it, why the company will never tell you how it works, why sometimes it seems like it makes decisions randomly and on its own, it's because it does. YouTube won't tell you because they don't know.
Yeah.
An algorithm, especially if it's done by like deep machine learning, where you just like, you let the machine figure, like you give the machine parameters, you feed it millions of data of bits and content and videos, and you let it determine how to come up with it. You don't know the reasoning it's using.
Yeah, it's a black box.
Exactly. All you can do is ask the algorithm, hey, can you give me this?
Yeah.
And YouTube doesn't want to say what they're asking for because that would also implicate them.
Yeah.
But they couldn't tell you how it worked.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to mention, like, a Philosophy 2 did a video on algorithms, and he had a really interesting line that I think perfectly sums them up, if I may repeat that.
Sure.
An algorithm looks at two pictures of a cat and says, these are cats. And I show them another picture of a cat, and they go, oh, no, that's not a cat. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a cat. And the algorithm goes, nuh-uh, it doesn't have a gray background.
Yeah.
You don't know what the algorithm is looking at.
Yeah.
The two pictures of cats it had, the thing they had in common was gray background, so it thought that's what made it a cat.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, these things can get pretty accurate if you feed them millions of bits of data, but even then, you don't really know exactly what they're looking at.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Anyway, so we're getting a little far from the discussion.
Yes, we are.
But my point is what the algorithm thinks is important. An algorithm is not like an objective measure. An algorithm is not just like science and Spock or whatnot. It's biased by the people who make it.
Yep.
The results it gets are based on what YouTube asks of it and how they set it up. Mm-hmm. And they are ignorant too, because they don't know exactly how it actually does that. My point is there's so much room for bias in here, and that's the bias that we have to live with. Mm-hmm. Code can be racist. Code can be sexist. Mm-hmm. Code is not impervious to these things. The algorithm is just a tool that YouTube uses to scapegoat all of their bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. You done? You done with that?
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you that you should be able to, if there really is that many legal complications, you should be able to verify your age and then be able to have completely unrestricted access to anything on the
I think
platform.
It's worth pointing out that self-verification is an underrated metric. So many people just are so distrusting of the masses that they're like, no, you have to let us collect your data to verify you are what age you are, or that this video is a mature video. You have to let us collect that data. You can't just self-report and have us trust you. Mm-hmm. Even if like over 90% of people or people that make videos self-report accurately. Right?
Yeah.
And like, I understand maybe you wouldn't want a kid self-reporting to be an adult so they watch mature content, but I think there's an argument to be made. Kids are going to kind of do that anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely
And if
true.
they do that, then at least it's not on you. You asked them to be honest, and they just weren't honest with you.
Yeah.
Maybe set up a system of parental controls, but I don't know. If you set up that kind of system, you would at least never have an issue where someone identified as a kid and saw adult content.
Yeah.
If the kid lied, it's kind of on them.
Yeah.
You would never have an issue where a kid was like, I accidentally found mature content, you know? It just wouldn't happen unless you messed up somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
And also another frustrating thing is that, and especially in America, I think more in America than anywhere else, possibly. Let me know if your country's worse. Sex is often conflated with sexuality.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring up that, actually, because a lot of LGBT content gets gate-kept and age-restricted.
QIA+.
Yeah. Okay, yes. But anyway, a lot of it gets gate-kept and age-restricted just because it's talking about these identities.
I mean, again, YouTube had another controversy about that. Turns out the algorithm was censoring those videos along with the pornography. Literally videos that were just like, here's what it's like to be a lesbian, you know, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Censoring that.
Yep.
And there was enough of an outrage over it that YouTube seems to have maybe rectified that. We have to trust them.
I guess the one way you could test it would be to do what they did back then and like make those videos with those terms in the title and
I mean, people try testing that, but that's only ever useful in a very narrow slice of where you are in the world and at what time you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly, because you really just can't get a lot of data at once on that.
And also,
Unless
like,
maybe I guess you could program a bot to do it.
well, it also depends on where you are in the global market. You know, if you were the biggest person on YouTube who does that, you can get very different results compared to if you're a nobody.
Definitely.
Because nobody's videos tend to be looked at with a lot more scrutiny and less frequently. So you'll get by for a while until one of the bots does pick you up, in which case they'll just flag everything they see.
So yeah, I actually wanted to talk about that in regard to video games because there are games in Japan that were more frivolous with their gender expression, and then for Western audiences, it was censored.
You know what? Yeah, like okay, I listened to a podcast on what was it? Unladylike? Was that the one where they interviewed? No. Sorry, no. It was Private Parts Unknown, where they interviewed a sex worker in Japan.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. And I've lived in Japan before, although I was only a kid at the time. And the way like we treat sex here and they treat sex there is similar in many ways, but very different in other ways. Like I definitely think like the more progressive like LGBT culture is like stronger over here. We have a much more like out and proud community.
Although to be fair, recently Japan has like the people of Japan, especially the younger generation, have been very.
I was coming up with a but.
Okay.
My butt was going to say that I think, however, the entirety of the people of Japan, on average, tend to be more accepting of LGBTQIA+ than the average American. That there is a significant portion, maybe even a majority, probably not, probably a minority, but maybe a voting majority of Americans are actively opposed to this. And that percentage is smaller in Japan, where a lot of people in Japan just really don't care.
Yeah, and I think that's partly because of the normalization in their media. Because, like, there's so much anime and manga that's literally about lesbian and gay couples, and a lot of it even having gender expressions and stuff. And yeah, you can say that a lot of it may be fetishizing or maybe done badly, or like they still have the same bad tropes of, oh, it's funny because he's dressing like a girl, that kind of stuff. But I also think a lot of it, there is quite a bit of it that's just wholesome and good, and a lot of people just feel like that's normal because they get exposed to so much of it.
And, we criticize a lot with anime and a lot of regressive crap that's stuck in there. Like, some of our favorite anime has some really problematic stuff in it. But I think maybe we have to kind of take a step back and appreciate for a moment that that's still a lot better than a lot of what America can provide. And maybe we just don't notice it because so many of like the really popular American TV shows, which America is mostly live action, right? Sitcoms and that kind of thing, are extremely hetero and never even acknowledge the existence of something LGBTQIA+.
Yes,
so we get to a point where Japan messes up, does things problematically, but at least they're doing things wrong, as opposed to America, which, like, the moment we pretend that, like, oh, Disney has a gay character, oh my goodness, praise be to Disney for acknowledging our existence,
Yeah, that's really interesting and I'd also be interested to see, like, exactly how much of it is actually good, because I would be willing to wager that there's definitely more of it that's good than you would expect, just because a lot of that stuff doesn't get imported or translated.
Maybe the best stuff stays Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there is actually really good representation, and we just don't get to see that. We see the fetishizing stuff because it doesn't become popular and get translated, or maybe it's just indie manga artists and anime makers doing it.
And I think there's probably something to be said, though, about how a lot of the people that make the anime, particularly probably the bigger ones, are a lot of older Japanese men, because they still have a lot of sexism in Japan, and men get more of the jobs and women get paid less, much like America. Right? So a lot of the time the anime is being created by men.
Yeah, exactly. And in that case, you definitely have this stuff happening with the popular stuff. But because they have so much of it, I would be willing to wager that the less popular stuff exists and may actually be good representation. I'd definitely be curious to see that. I kind of wish I knew Japanese.
I'd really like to learn Japanese someday.
Yeah.
I'd really like to go back there someday.
Yeah.
Although, like, politically speaking, it's still better than America, whatever. But anyway, we could talk a lot about this. I think it's an interesting conversation, but I think it's specifically related to what we were talking about, because the fact of the matter is, a lot of the time, progressive Japanese content gets watered down and erased upon localization to America.
Absolutely. Certain jokes and stuff get written differently. Sometimes entire characters swap genders. I will tell you of an instance I know of that. I play the Style Savvy series on DS. Well, they have a character that's supposed to be a judge in one of the earlier ones. That's supposed to be like the fashion industry's top critic. And it was a man in the Japanese version, an effeminate man. When they localized the game for Western audiences, they just changed it to a woman.
Yeah. Another example would be, Paper Mario. Mm-hmm. You ever play Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door? Often considered the best Paper Mario game.
Yes, absolutely. I've played most of the Paper Mario games. Just not the crappy ones.
And then, Vivian, who was a shadow siren from that game, one of the companions you can get. And I think one of the most interesting ones, because she was a former villain. Mm-hmm. So in the game, the story's like, the big bad of the game is the Shadow Queen. She has these 3 shadow sirens that work for her, that act as her agents. The shadow sirens are all women. One of them is a little overweight, one of them's a little elderly, and then one of them's conventionally attractive. Mm-hmm. That one is Vivian. Mm-hmm. They all have different elements. Vivian also has fire. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I keep saying she, but actually that's just the way I think of it because I played the Western release. In Japan, Vivian was mocked because Vivian was bullied by Vivian's sisters. Mm-hmm. That's why Vivian stops being a villain and betrays them and sides with Mario, the hero. in the Japanese release of the game, Vivian's sisters were mocking Vivian for being a man. Because Vivian was a he, a very effeminate he. Now I didn't play the Japanese version, so I don't know exactly how this was interpreted. I have a very strong feeling that Vivian was supposed to be transgender. That Vivian wanted to identify as a she, but had been born a he, unlike the other Shadow Sirens, and was being bullied for it, and they were being transphobic by calling Vivian a he. Because especially, like, you know, again, this was progressive compared to America, but in Japan they had this thing where even if the character clearly wants to be a woman, they'll still call them a he because biology or crap like that. But when this game was ported to America, they just changed Vivian's gender. They just made her a she the whole time. And it's weird because, like, maybe that's what she wanted, but also you just erased a transgender character. Or maybe just an effeminate man, if that's all Vivian wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason this was so controversial is because there's a scene where Vivian kisses Mario.
Oh, yeah.
So either Mario kissed a trans woman, or Mario had a gay kiss with a man.
And they refuse. Yeah. Oh,
and it wasn't a jokey kind of thing either. Like, Vivian actually did fall for Mario.
Because he treated her with respect, unlike her sisters.
Now, I think Vivian's a trans woman. If anyone listening to this knows better, let us know.
Like, if you know exactly what the Japanese text implied.
Yeah, all I've seen is, like, what people's interpretations of the Japanese text was. I don't know what the text said itself. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
There was another similar issue with Birdo in the Nintendo franchise. That one's a little bit shakier because in the Japanese, or in the initial release, both in the American version and the Japanese version, said Birdo was a man. But then in all subsequent releases, they changed it to be a woman. So Nintendo even changed the Japanese, like, changed the whole thing to reflect what the Western audience would want.
Yeah, and like,
So Birdo kind of became transgender, but the reasons for it were icky.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, but like, also, like, they do this weird stuff where, like, on the side in descriptions or whatever, or I believe I've heard that Birdo's description says that they prefer to be called Burdette.
Well,
or something like that.
It did mention that in the description where it says Birdo's a man, but that was dropped, never brought up again.
Okay.
And Birdo continues to be known by Birdo later on. So a lot of people interpret this as Birdo just being trans, but Nintendo will never acknowledge it.
True.
I think people just kind of take what they can get with representation because it's so scarce.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Obviously, we can do better than that. I also wanted to mention the character Poison. Poison is a notorious character amongst fighting games. And I say fighting games in general because these games have so many crossovers. I think she was from King of Fighters originally, but she's appeared in several crossovers, like with Street Fighter and whatnot. In the American release, Poison was said to be a woman. Now, Poison is extremely seductive. She dresses up as if she's like a crooked cop kind of thing, or a prison guard turned prisoner. I don't understand it. She wears like a cop hat and has like chains and handcuffs and stuff. She's obviously not an actual cop. She's just like ganking the aesthetic. These fighting games don't have elaborate backstories. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's very seductive in her appearance, very typically attractive, right? And she's a woman. However, in the Japanese release, the original release of the game, Poison, her whole thing was that she was secretly a man.
Oh, wow.
Again, problematic language. Obviously, we interpreted that as she is obviously presenting as female. And if she has some stuff, some stuff with her genitals going on, that does not make her a man, but maybe indicates that she was that she transitioned and became a trans woman, right?
Yeah.
However, this is what I was talking about with Vivian, with the problematic language in Japan. this was always sold as she was secretly a man.
Yeah. That's what they tend to do a lot in Japan, is like if they have a trans character, they'll have it be their big secret, and they'll never out and out say what gender they are. They'll confuse it or whatever, and then it's gross.
Right. And it is gross. It is trans representation, but gross.
Yeah.
Like we could do better. But then when they localize it for an American release, because America's been so historically transphobic, even more than Japan, the developers will choose to erase that entirely and make her a woman. The developers of Kings of Fighters literally said, I don't understand why there's so much controversy about this. Poison is a man in Japan and a woman in America. It's that simple.
Wow.
As if Poison's gender is dependent upon her nationalism and geography.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. And also, no, Poison is obviously probably isn't a man. She's a trans woman. Like, why is
She's
it so hard to
very clearly performing like femininity.
Exactly. So why is it so hard for you to acknowledge her gender? Like that's something that's really I hate about Japanese media, is when they do have trans characters, they tend to literally completely ignore the gender they want to be.
Yeah, it's like you get the representation, but we're going to treat the character like garbage.
Yeah.
We're going to be transphobic to them the whole time. I mean, look at Chihiro and Danganronpa.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh, the secret. Why couldn't it just be that she was trans? You know?
And it doesn't have to be a big thing. I understand, people might want to like have it be a big thing and have that be the focus of the story, but
you know what? The same plot points around Chihira's death could have been used with her just transitioning. Because it could have simply gone that, yeah, she was worried people might find out about her being trans, because she was worried about people being transphobic and attacking her. And that would have been this viable reason for her to do what she did. But no, they couldn't do that. And it could have been a transphobic crime, the murder. And that would have at least made for an interesting story around it. And you could have had the same exact plot. But no.
And there is value to such stories where you point out bigotry and prejudice. But I do think there is such a thing as overvaluing those stories. It's the same thing we have in America, where like there's this perception that whenever you have a big budget Hollywood movie that has like a bunch of black actors in it in the lead roles, is the movie about slavery? Yeah,
I agree with that, but it would have been better than what they did with her.
I know. I just I do think it's underrated of having people in minority positions, whether it's race, gender, LGBTQIA plus, anything. That those facts about those characters are incidental to their stories. That it's not the most defining thing about them. That there's more to them. That they are full human beings, even if fictional ones.
And Cheryl was the ultimate programmer. That was who she was. It would have been cool if, like, I don't have to keep talking about this.
Look, if you want to hear more about Chihiro, listen to our Danganronpa podcast. Okay. We should probably move on.
Fine.
You have any other subjects teed up you want to talk about, Kira?
Actually, the whole gender thing was the main thing I wanted to bring up. Because, honestly, that's what I was pissed about with censorship.
What?
The thing we just talked about how LGBT is seen as mature and therefore censored way more often.
Oh, there is something I can bring up related to that.
Yeah?
In America, according to the MPAA, the Motion Pictures Association, whatever, the rating system for movies, literally gives you a higher rating for female pleasure.
Oh yeah, I know that. Literally, if a woman is...
Can I explain it?
Sure.
If you have a sex scene in a movie, that will automatically make it at least rated R, right? It should. Pretty sure. It's supposed to be. It's
I don't
supposed
know.
to be.
If you cut away enough and don't show it, like,
Okay, but if you have an actual sex scene, it should be rated R.
yeah.
And in that sex scene, if you see the man, like you see his face and he's like, oh yeah, and he's like really enjoying himself, it's still rated R. If you show the woman's face and you see her getting off on it and you see her moaning and going, yeah, NC-17.
Yep.
NC-17. It gets bumped up a rating. And this goes for like literally if a man is just like with himself, touching himself and getting off, that's a one person sex scene, rated R. If it's a woman, NC-17.
Yep.
If it's a man with a woman, rated R. If it's a man with a man, NC-17. If it's a woman with a woman, NC-17.
That's awful.
They're openly homophobic and sexist.
This is why we can only have stories about sex in foreign films. Like, I don't know if you know about this, but there's this foreign film called Diary of a Nymphomaniac, and obviously it's constant sex throughout the movie and shows everything.
Why is there even an NC-17 rating? Shouldn't mature just be anything goes?
Yeah, because
or a rated R or whatever.
They want to be able to say that NC-17 isn't even allowed in theaters, and it's just like,
they're calling it pornography. They just want a porn classification.
Yeah, exactly, which is ridiculous. Because it's like,
I guess I would be maybe okay with it if you're like, if you see the genitals NC-17, because then at least that wouldn't be homophobic and sexist.
Yeah, that actually, you're completely right about that. Yes.
Just make it consistent. I've gone on about this several times, but like, there is no way Grand Theft Auto 5 should have been a mature game. That was an AO game at best.
But they managed to get the mature.
They bribed them. They bribed
Yep.
the ESRB, and they bribed Peggy, the Australian rating system. They bribed them because Peggy only like years after the game came out was like, we re-reviewed it, and turns out this game was not mature, it was restricted, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And same thing with Saints Row, actually. No, actually, no. Sorry, Saints Row got banned out the gate in Australia.
Oh,
But Grand Theft Auto was just fine.
Yeah.
Even though the series are basically the same when it comes to maturity. Actually, I would argue Saints Row does it better because they don't try to be serious when doing it.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto's story is garbage.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, there probably isn't even much of one from what I've heard.
I tried playing it, and I got to an AOC and stopped and never played it again. Sorry, this is making me angry.
No, I understand. I understand.
We should talk about censorship by social media companies with regards to sex.
Oh, like the Twitch thing that we talked about?
Oh, yeah, but I have a lot to go on with Twitch, so let's start with some others.
Okay, fine.
I mean, we already talked about YouTube a lot. YouTube, many people hate YouTube because there's so many problems that YouTube has. And we have a YouTube, and we hate it. But it's also like the best option.
It's literally like the only option.
Monopolies.
Yeah, because basically, if you want eyeballs on your video, you have to do YouTube. You don't have another option. Because otherwise you will literally cut your audience into small fractions of what it could be.
I mean, yeah, that's how platforms work.
The most popular platform at the moment is the only one that gets used because people just don't bother with multiple platforms.
It's like, imagine having like a town, right? And you have like a town square where the bazaar is, where everyone's like doing their shops and selling things. And you walk through the main town bazaar, and you see all the things. And they say, oh, no sex workers allowed here. But it's okay. It's a free market. You can go to the bazaar on the edge of town, and you can still take your business there. If people really like it, then they'll go there instead of the main one. Well, it's on the edge of town. No one's there yet. Unless I just like set fire to the main one, everyone's going to stay at the main one.
Yeah.
You know it's a false bargain, and that's why you're doing it. You just don't want them to exist.
That's why red light districts are a thing, because they want to put all of that in one place to the side where, like, you can go if you want, but don't dare come to the rest of our city.
I mean, kind of, yeah. And if you're going to excise all the sex workers and all the scary stuff, then, quotations, then it's better for them to all work together, all the sex workers unite into one district and be like, come here, that's what we do. But then you're also kind of gridlocked into only doing that. And
Yeah,
what
that's true.
if you wanted to have like a part-time veggie and a part-time sex work business, you know? If the bazaar had been open to everyone in the beginning, you could have had that. Now you can't. Now you're forced into one or the other. Mm-hmm. And the way social media has been treating sex in general, like,
And sex workers.
well, true. We can talk more about that, but I want to talk about the social media stuff first.
Okay.
Like Tumblr, for example. Tumblr used to be big with letting you do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But now they specifically came out with rules that ban female presenting nipples.
Great.
How do you
majority of
determine that?
The majority of social media platforms ban those.
Yeah, they were the first to do it. Other ones came out and started doing it too.
Yeah.
Because yay, capitalism. Like, I remember hearing a story. I think you might have looked into this, Kira, where there was a former man who was transitioning, or who had transitioned into a woman, but like her body was still kind of catching up. She was taking hormones and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So she had a masculine looking, quotations, body, right? Mm-hmm. So she would take pictures of her bare chest every day. And then, like, over time, they started filling out and becoming more voluptuous. Each time being like, hey, Tumblr, are my nipples female presenting yet? How about today? How about today? How about today?
I think it was Instagram. But
it was Instagram?
I'm pretty sure, but like.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But yeah, like that's what she did, and it's hilarious because it's like, so when does the line cross into female presenting?
It's arbitrary.
You've got everything in between because I'm transitioning. So, at what point on this spectrum is it female presenting?
I never followed up on the story, but I know the answer.
What?
The answer is once female, always female. Once minority, always minority. Once second class, always second class. The moment they look sexy enough, ban the whole thing. All of it. Mm-hmm. Every picture.
Yeah.
Every picture retroactively becomes offensive.
Mm-hmm. Which is ridiculous, of course.
So I think we should start talking about Twitch now.
Yeah.
Twitch just came out with some rules that are even more restrictive than ones they've had previously.
This is why we decided to talk about this.
Yep. And I mean, it's been an issue we've been talking about, but this just like calcified it. Is that a word? What?
I mean, that is a word in reference to like calcifying body parts or whatever, but like.
Then it's appropriate. I don't know where I heard that word, honestly. Anyway, so apparently, you might not know about this, Kira, but there's been a scourge on Twitch.
Oh my God!
There's been a pandemic.
Stop it!
People are dying. There's an infection that has been getting into our bodies because of other bodies that have been parasocially close to us. You know what I'm talking about. Breasts on Twitch.
Oh my God.
Did you think I was talking about some other pandemic? No, it's breasts on Twitch. People are dying because of this.
Why are you talking about it like this? Why?
Because why else would they suddenly make the rules that you can't do this unless they thought it was a serious problem, because they acted like it was a serious problem, like it was something rampant gone wrong. And I think comparing it to an actual pandemic makes it look really trivial and idiotic by comparison, because it is.
I mean, that's fair.
There's this idea on Twitch. There's this term they use. It's a little offensive. Do you know the term? Because I don't want to say it.
I don't know it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Bleep tubers?
Breast tubers?
No.
Boob tubers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't want to say that because it's always used in jest. Because it's the idea that... I appreciate you saying it for me. Thank you, Kieran. Mm-hmm. It's the idea that they're just using their breasts to get extra viewers and whatnot. And first of all, if that worked, that's just the hand of the free market. I'm kidding. I don't care about that. But honestly, they want to use their body to help out their viewers. I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Maybe have appropriate tags or whatnot so people know what they're getting into. But sure, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, it ignores the fact at how few of the biggest Twitch streamers are women and how disadvantaged they are.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So there's rules on literally what you can wear, to the point where most of the female characters you can play in some of the biggest games, particularly fighting games, are more provocative than you yourself are allowed to dress.
Mm-hmm. There's the specific instance of a Chun-Li cosplayer getting suspended or banned or whatever, or because they were cosplaying Chun-Li while streaming on Twitch.
That's actually kind of a little racist.
Actually, yeah, now that you think about it, I think it was a Chinese woman.
Okay, well,
or
good.
Like whatever culture Chun-Li is from.
China,
I'm not sure.
China.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about any cultural appropriation stuff. But we're literally talking about a type of garb, a type of outfit that does not match the American puritanical conditions that Twitch is adhering to. Twitch is saying like, oh, your shirt has to be blah, blah, blah. Your breasts have to be like this. Your butt can't be your shorts. And, here's all the dumb rules, right? Mm-hmm. What if you're wearing a traditional Chinese kimono with no pants? Or you cut... Honestly, I don't know what Chun-Li's outfit is called. I'm sorry.
I don't know
but
either.
It's definitely not shirt and pants.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it shows a little thigh, who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I get you.
We watch a trans woman streamer named Nicotine a lot. Mm-hmm. And she kind of like does a middle finger to the system. Mm-hmm. And basically she does literally everything she can get away with without pushing it so far she might get banned. Mm-hmm. So she does a lot of like parasexual imagery. Yeah. Like proto-sexual.
And innuendo and that kind of thing.
Like she literally has a game when she's playing with one of her friends about his name's Locke the Raven. She has this game that they play together where they just make puns that sound like innuendo.
Yeah.
And they just do it because technically it's not against the rules. And it's just like their way of like thumbing their nose to Twitch. And I love it.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And there are alternatives to Twitch, like we talked about with YouTube and the bizarre example.
Yeah, exactly. But again, you're literally just cutting the possible height, maximum amount of years you have into tiny little fractions.
And I mean, I think we desperately need alternatives. But that's why monopolies are such a big threat. Mm-hmm. And Twitch has the majority now. Mm-hmm. Maybe if it was easier for people to go cross-platform, it wouldn't be such an issue. But I don't even know what kind of framework that would require.
Oh, well, there are tools to do that.
I don't know. I feel like platforms should be community made and not owned by a giant corporation. And that way, there would be no one that is the monopoly. And possibly, if they all like stitch themselves together into one big one, it would just be the one big community, democratically made platform that people could vote on the rules or something, you know? Mm-hmm. Where's the Twitch co-op? In the meantime, we have to deal with alternatives, which aren't perfect, but I've looked at some of them, and there's some real promise there.
Yeah.
They're still corporate owned, but they're indie. You know, they're not really corporate, I guess. They're just companies, just indie companies, indie people trying to get them started. And, you know, it's still within the system of capitalism, but I think that's great. Let's oppose the giant corporations with a little organized business, right? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, like if all the businesses in America were literally run by a few people,
like mom and pop kind of things.
Yeah, like we're small businesses, capitalism wouldn't be at the end stage right now. We'd have more time. It would be better.
Though capitalism ensures that will inevitably become a thing.
Yes.
Even if literally you killed off all the corporations and just had mom and pops, all you're doing is buying like 100 years or whatever.
Well, yes, that's why I specifically said we wouldn't be at the end stage right now.
Sure.
Eventually we would get there, but maybe that would be enough time to actually do something about things.
These alternatives are cool, and I have two recommendations if you want to try them out. One of them's called Plex Storm. It's game streaming for adults, and then another one is called I think it's Gushi. Yes, Gushi.
Okay.
And they have Twitter accounts too, so you know, feel free to look those up. They provide this alternative where they're like, do whatever you want, say whatever you want. There are a few rules. It's not complete anarchy, but compared to Twitch, it might as well be.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want you to do hate speech or threaten actual people's lives. And I think we can all agree that's reasonable. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to police your body and your content unless it violates like federal laws. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check those out. However, there are some things that I think they're not what I want to see in an alternative. Mm-hmm. There are ways that they fail at that I think we could do better than that. And there simply is an alternative that I think meets my quality standards personally. Mm-hmm. First of all, they have this like not safe for work or lewd switch where they have both mature and non-mature content, and you can flick the switch on for which content you want to look at. They want to offer both alternatives. And unless you turn on the explicit switch, you don't even see like explicit thumbnails and whatnot, stuff you might be uncomfortable with. They have a filtering, censoring system that's completely consensual. Mm-hmm. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, it's not perfect. Sometimes explicit stuff gets through the switch, but they're trying, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
However, I think the idea that you can classify this into a binary switch is inherently flawed.
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
At the very least, the switch should have 3 settings.
Fair enough.
But maybe even more than that. And, you know, use a tag system so you can get even more specific. But I think specifically, you should be able to have one that's like completely family friendly, and then one that's completely pornographic, and then one that's not completely pornographic but is lewd. Like, imagine a female body, right? A female body that's fully clothed, family friendly. A female body that's fully naked, that's fully explicit. A female body that's wearing a bikini, though, would just be kind of lewd, covering up the genitals, but you see as much of the body as possible without that. Mm-hmm. The fact that the switch lacks a middle ground, I think, is revealing of one of the biggest flaws in these sites. And that's that they have so many people going there because of Twitch's and YouTube's puritanical visions that the sites become almost exclusively pornographic content.
Yeah.
There's very few family-friendly stuff in comparison to that. Uh-huh. And I don't want to knock them for it. You know, support your sex workers and all that, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you just want to have content that explores the totality of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
We made a tweet saying as much.
Yeah.
And I just... Sometimes you want lewd or inappropriate stuff. Sometimes you want mature stories. Sometimes you want to watch a rated R film without it being explicitly pornography.
Uh-huh.
And so I feel like they're only catering part of the demographic that they need to actually be successful in the long term.
Yeah.
And to
I agree
actually
with you
give
there.
full user choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that's a bit of an oversight, but infinitely better than Twitch and YouTube in regards to options. Because
Yeah,
2 is better than 1.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Do you have anything you want to finish up with, Kira? I'm sorry I've been talking for so long on this.
It's fine. I'm good.
Any final thoughts?
I completely agree with you about that streamer thing, and I wish we had a big enough alternative to Twitch that allowed that content while also being respectful of people's consent and not wanting to see it all the time. You know, like you said, have a good, decent, like, different levels and tagging and all that stuff. Trust people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Support your sex workers.
Yep.
Especially now that we're all quarantined. They need money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all need money, but they need money.
I'm Kira.
Sorry, this has been a very anger and sadness inducing episode.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Pay for your porn.